This is Pod Populi.
Podcast for the people.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
Hi again, everyone. It's Brian Howie. Welcome to The Great Love Debate, the world's #1 dating and relationship podcast. Since 2015, I am in the lovely studios of Pod Populi, podcasts for the people. And I got a special surprise here. You never know who's going to pop into these parts. She has been on this podcast many, many times, but she has not been on this podcast in quite some time. I thought it was a good time to lure her back here. I have a lot of things to discuss with her. I've seen her because she was on our stage in New York a few months ago during the height of the madness and the nonsense. You know her as the founder, head honcho, CEO of WeDeepen. She's the host of WeDeepen with Christina. Her name is Christina Weber. How are you?
I'm well.
What's your official title at WeDeepen?
I am the
Do you have business
founder,
cards?
I'm the founder, director, CEO.
That sounds
at
too
WeDeepen. WeDeepen.com.
Yeah, that your shirt says Deepen.
I know. I initially named the company Deepen, and then when we got the domain,
Podcast is called Deepen.
The podcast is called Deepen, so that's where I get to keep Deepen. But we are WeDeepen.com, so the rest of the world just started calling us WeDeepen.
A business card with a title like that seems too pedestrian for you. It doesn't seem exotic enough title for you.
Oh, I just pulled an old business
You used to be
card.
the love concierge or something, right?
Your love accomplice.
Oh, yeah. I think I like love concierge. Yeah, your love accomplice, Christina Weber.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you're still a love accomplice. You're still deeply and interested in the biz.
I'm still your love accomplice.
Yes, you're still your love accomplice. You are. Mm-hmm. Good. I have not seen you in a while on the podcast. And one thing we're going to talk about a whole lot of things, but one thing I know is going to be of interest to my listeners is you did something that I kind of was always curious if it works as an exercise. And apparently some producer in Hollywood thought this is going to be a good social experiment. You were on a reality TV show I think it was on Peacock, hosted by Andy Cohen. It was called X-Rated, where you had to circle back and reconnect with exes. Is that correct?
This is correct.
Did you have to think about, I imagine there's two parts to this. Exes who you wanted to connect with, exes that would make good television, and then exes who would be willing to participate in this. You know, what was the hardest of the three? You thinking about, do I want to open that can of worms?
Oh, it was a whole psyche journey that I went through. First, when the casting called, I thought, well, I could have thought of this show. This is something of interest to me. I've been wondering to answer the question, like, are we really transforming? Are we just repeating the same shit over and over and over? And the only way you can tell that is if you interview somebody's all their exes. Mm-hmm. And so when they called, I was like, well, this is interesting. I feel like I could write this show. And then I had to dive into my files at this point in my life.
Files.
I had to dive into my files. I mean, at this point in my life, I'm currently single and I'm newly 40. Mm-hmm. So that is
Welcome.
like 2+ decades of relationships that I could.
A lot of files.
A lot of files.
25-ish years.
25-ish years,
Right.
yeah. And some, the longest relationship in that was 5 years. And I'll say is for the most part, I have been out in the world meeting a lot of people, always. So there was a lot of people to consider. And yeah, it was mentally challenging at times before, they called in January and then casting sent me to production in April. And after that, I mean, I tried to pull out of production 3 times.
Oh.
I did. I was like, this is just too much. It's, I want to go forward. I don't want to go backwards. And you guys are making me continue to go backwards. And 3 men did the show with me. Actually, 4 men did the show, but 1 was cut in the final editing.
Second time cut from your life.
Second time, yes. And it was vulnerable. I probably reached out to maybe 8 to 10 men.
Do they cast you and then you reach out, or you say, if I get cast, here's who's willing to do this?
During the casting process, all the men are part of the casting process.
Oh,
so
they
that
are.
when they go into production, they're going into production saying that she's got at least 2 people.
Do they reach out, or you reach out to the exes? Are you like, here's the last number I have, track them down?
I reached out to all the exes first. I didn't touch the longest relationship that I was in from 25 to 30. I didn't go into that one, and I didn't go into that partly. It's the most significant relationship I've had.
Right.
But I didn't reach out to him because when I ended things with him at 30, I asked him, give me feedback. How can I be a better girlfriend in the future?
Give an exit survey?
I did give an exit survey. So I already had known what his feedback was at that point, which was pretty much like, you're perfect, you're wonderful.
But with distance, there could be a reevaluation of that.
With
With some time, you'll be like, you know what? They were bad, or they were good, or they do things. We're not the best at that.
Yeah. And I can look back at that relationship particularly, and I was pretty controlling at that time.
How many of these guys that you even considered do you have some contact with, like Facebook friends, social media, or how many were just like, I don't have any idea what happened? Because you had to know that they weren't in relationship. Are they in relationships?
So all of my exes, for the most part, I can't think of anyone I'm Facebook friends with.
Okay. Which I think is a positive sign. Some people don't like that, but I think it means you didn't end things terribly.
Yeah. Except when you see the show that there's 3 guys, the last guy has defriended me from Facebook, so I'm no longer friends.
After the show?
After the show, yes.
Okay. We're not going to, no spoilers here. You can fire it up on Peacock.
The Peacock doesn't show that because we actually left the show and hung out that night. But then he needed to, what did he say? Release the ship. Some type of term that he said he needed to burn the bridge.
Is that a sexual term?
No, to burn the boat, because he was interested in getting back together and I wasn't reciprocating that. And so he needed to let go, and in order for him to do so.
So how do you contact these people and like, listen, there's a reality television project. I might be a part of it. Here's the format of it. Are you interested in revisiting our relationship in front of the world? No, but I'd like to have a conversation with you. Did that happen?
Yeah. I reached out to my college boyfriend. He was always, we had a 2-year relationship, but he's kind of a judgmental person. So he responded and said, I don't know why you're using your sex to be your career. You're better than that. And so he said no. And I had, one of my hardest relationships, 3 months, or one of the greatest transformational 3 months of learning, somebody who I met at Burning Man and then traveled to and lived with for a month in Bali. And when I look back on that relationship, and hate to use the label, but he's my experience with narcissism. But he's a character. He's such an interest. People love him.
They are charismatic.
They're so charismatic. So I had reached out to him as well and invited him to it. And then he did a call, a casting with one of the people, and he thought the show looked too much like a Jerry Springer. So he said no.
Or a Maury Povich, which would be even worse.
And I think he would have said, yeah, maybe if it was focused on him. But he's one who after we had ended that relationship, I just wished, I dreamed about starting a Facebook group for all of his exes so we could all heal together, because we all when I have connected with his exes, because he has so many of them out in the world, we all have similar thread-throughs and storylines.
Yeah.
So he would have been an interesting character to have, but he said no.
I bet half of them would go out with him again, though. They probably would.
I do know someone who I actually got connected to one of his exes a couple years later, who through a mutual friend, and said, hey, she's having a hard time with so-and-so. Can you help?
Now, one thing that we around here always strive for is consistency. Now, sometimes the things I think, believe, felt do evolve and they do change, and I have no problem with that. The one thing that I feel that I am a flip-flopper on, if you go back and you take the transcripts of all, 300 or 400 of these podcasts and say, what is the thing that I'm inconsistent the most about? And I think it is the revisiting the ex. Half the time you'll hear me say, don't look in the rearview mirror, always look forward, out with the old, onward, onward, onward. And then half the time you might hear me say, people change, life changes, circumstances change, and two people who didn't work out 7 years ago, there is a chance that reconnecting at a different point in life, in a different place, and a different emotional capability could change things. Where do you stand on that generally?
I think you and I did a podcast a few years ago, and I was on this, at the time, I was preaching everybody should break up.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that moment.
I do those too.
And I don't know. I if people are willing to change and you grow, yeah, sure. When I look back at my previous relationships, do I think there's somebody that like I'm like that we had a misconnection or a missed moment? I don't know.
I know, but I think you're looking through them through a specific prism, because you just said, I reached out to my college boyfriend, and not to date you too much, but that's 15, 20 years ago. And you're like, they were like this, or they are like this, or they were always like this.
They were still the same.
Well, how did you, I mean, are you assigning them a personality or characteristics that existed then because that's what you were familiar with and that's what you thought you knew? Or are they the same? Because I find that hard to believe that life doesn't evolve or change or hopefully better.
I imagine that, yes, there has been some change and evolution, but at the essence, at the core.
We are who we are?
We are who we are.
That's both comforting and horrifying at the same time.
It's like your intuition. If I went back to, some of these exes, it's like I'm not fully trusting my intuition. Maybe my intuition was just saying not now, but I don't have anybody in my past except, I have, there was a delicate dance with, the significant relationship that who I didn't reach out to. And that was part of the challenge during the casting is like, do I reach out to him? Do I not reach out to him? And I had to almost go through breaking up with him sort of again, because I chose not to reach out, but your psyche is like, maybe we should be together. Maybe we shouldn't be together. Like maybe this is why I've been so single why I've been single for 10 years is because we are supposed to get back together. But that in the end wasn't healthy for my mental sake. And I did end up talking to, there was a moment in time I talked to a psychic. Sometimes I praise talking to a psychic and sometimes I don't. But this one psychic did say to me, I don't think he's grown as much as, you're going to have the same challenges that you had with him years ago. You've been doing all this work, and she didn't see him doing all that work that I had done. And so her saying that is, it was able to cut the tie.
Well, we usually remember an ex or somebody in the past either better than we should have or worse than we should have. We very rarely have kind of an accurate perspective. And so when we reconnect with these people, we tend to fall back in the familiar, and we tend to consciously or subconsciously get into a routine or a banter that our muscle memory or our brain memory remembers of, this is the way we were and this is our pattern, versus it isn't just a clean slate and two new people, because you share this past that it's dormant, but it's never quite gone. Mm-hmm. And that's part of why I guess this was a good TV experiment, is they're trying to awaken the ghosts of relationship past.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was an interesting TV experience because, show up in the studio that day. So I had 3 men who said yes, or 4, the one who was cut, but he came in through Zoom, and we were together when I was 18. So I had 3 men in studio with me, and it's not it was sort of like the day of the show they explained more deeply what they were going to do. Like, I didn't know going into it that at the end of the show, they're going to line all the guys up and ask if any of them wanted a second chance to get back together with me. And I was like, whoa, they didn't commit to this. Now you're going to
Nor did you.
Nor did I.
This isn't the newlywed game.
And so that was a twist. And it's not like
Now, what are you hoping for in that moment? You're hoping for yes, or you're hoping for no, so you don't have to deal with it? What?
Well, I think at that moment, your ego's in there, so I want them all to want me.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, of course.
Well, I don't know, of course. I'd be like, oh my God, I don't want them.
Yeah, no,
There's some ickiness.
for me, I mean, just being a